Hello. So first and foremost, thank you guys very much for having us come out here. I love coming to your neck of the woods. It's so darn pretty up here, and the day is gorgeous, so can't help but be in a good mood. So first and foremost, I should back up by saying that it's always a privilege for me to be in the same room, both with the panelists that we have here, because I grew up and raised in Little Village. I am in the process of going back to school, and so I came up through the organization, volunteering, becoming a leader, becoming a community organizer, and now what is the equivalent of an executive director. So I don't have the educational background. We call it organically educated in our neck of the woods. And so a lot of what I do, I learned by doing it. And so we bring kind of a mixture of what you've heard so far to the table. We're 12 years old as an organization. We're focused in the Little Village community, which is on the southwest side of Chicago, about 108,000 people within about a 5-mile area in radius, primarily Mexican, Mexican-American. Being a primarily immigrant community, we didn't exactly jump up one day and say, ooh, we should fight for environmental justice. It was more of a question of there was injustices happening in our community, and our parents and students came together to question what was happening, organize themselves based on their history and their tradition, and really start to question things like the retarring of a local school roof when students were in school, the replacement of windows in an old school building that spread lead and asbestos dust everywhere while the kids were in school. And so just different injustices that happen commonly, unfortunately, all across the U.S. And that activism on behalf of community members and parents and teachers and students led to the formation of our organization. So unfortunately, like many organizations, we are constantly reacting to what is happening in our community. And it's a new and exciting part for me as a somewhat of a young person, to be part of not so much reacting anymore, but setting the tone for what we would want to happen. And so what we do as an organization is fight both environmental injustices that are happening in our community, but set the tone for having an environmental eye and ear to what is going to happen in our community. So we work on a number of different issues, and a lot of people are like, holy crap, holy cow, you guys do everything in the kitchen sink. And we probably do too much with too little, but it's because it's what's important to our community. And so we do work around public transit. And I'm like, well, what does public transit have anything to do with environmental justice? Well, it has a lot to do with it. When you live in a community that's 5 mile in radius and we only have one bus line that goes east to west, and it means a lot when our city sticker rate percentage of cars has shot up 200% in the last 10 years because our public transit system has been cut. And it means a lot when our students and our parents can no longer afford to take public transit because they get rid of the day transfer on the buses. And so we do a lot of work both locally and nationally as part of other EJ organizations around the public transit issue. But I'm not here to talk about that. We do a lot of work around urban agriculture, a very big popular term these days. Which is interesting to say the least. They got a garden we've had a garden in the White House, but now they're making a big deal out of it. Culturally speaking, in our community, growing your own food is something that we've done for decades, centuries. My mother, my grandmother, my neighbors have all had some kind of plot of land in their backyard, not really thinking about what's in your soil, not really thinking about testing your soil, not really knowing that composting was a big thing now, not really knowing that organic food, big thing now. It's just always been a part of our community. And what we've seen in the last 10 years is a disconnect between our younger generations and our older generations in regards to not just growing your own food, but cooking your own food. We have a generation of young people and young parents who are very susceptible in buying into this notion of fast food, pre-made food, packaged food. And we're seeing that epidemic contribute to things like our obesity levels and our young people, particularly having diabetes, high blood pressure, and just incidences of health that are not normal for our young people to have. And so we work with our elders primarily to both teach our young people and other folks, whoever wants to learn, on how to grow and build their own garden, how to cook healthy food. I don't eat chile, but I'm learning how to make it in case one day I decide that I want to eat chile. But it's just an important notion for me to know so that I can pass it on to my children. We're losing the notion of talking to our neighbor. We're losing the notion of building community. It's more about keeping a vigilant eye and reporting anything that happens and staying locked in your house and learning everything you do from the computer. And we want to break that silo. We want our community members to come together. We want them to know that it's okay to shoot the stuff with your neighbor on the front stairs, that there's nothing wrong with young people hanging out and conversing. And we believe that that form of communication needs to be kept alive, that talking circles and communicate, we laugh at a lot of times because people are like, well, what's your database like email wise? And well, we don't have one. How do you send out your advisories? By hand. We want to keep that community form of communication alive because that's what makes up our community. So within our urban agriculture campaign, that's kind of like the backbone for our campaign. Everything is about growing your own food, growing your own community. And so it's just taking things that are relevantly culturally important to us and maintaining those things. Mind you, I don't have a green thumb for the life of me. The third thing that we work on is open space. You all have some amazing open space here. I am constantly jealous of lakes and land that you all got going on in this lovely city. Our community has one park for 108,000 people. And so if you take into consideration gang boundaries and just youth on youth violence and just distance, it's very difficult for a lot of our young people to even go to a park, much less play in a park. And so we have been fighting for more park space in our community for the last 12 years. We're hopeful that we're going to be getting a new 23-acre park in our neighborhood. The downside of that is it's on top of a Superfund site, which is a really badly contaminated, like the worst kind of contamination on a piece of property you could possibly ever think of. Because what we're left with in our community is industrial land. That's where our community is located. Why, people say, well, why do you live there? Well, we kind of had no other choice. This is where we can afford to live. This is where our community is. This is where new immigrants come to. It's not like if I could go live in Oak Park or, in some of the nicer neighborhoods, I'd love to, but I can't afford it. This is where my family lives. And so when you have different factors playing into that, we find a lot of our low-income communities of color dealing with questions of land reuse, brownfields, Superfund sites. And so, our city is constantly saying, well, who needs a park? Let's build another industry and get you some jobs. We are taking on those conversations now. Instead of reacting after the company comes in, we're saying, whoa, 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 whoa. Have you talked to community folks? What kind of jobs? How many jobs are we talking about? And really questioning land development. And so that's our open space campaign. The other thing that we work on in the bulk of what I'm here for is to talk about our clean power campaign. We have in our community one of 2 coal power plants within the city of Chicago. It's an 87-year-old coal power plant that is within walking distance of our homes in our community. This is one of 2 plants, as I mentioned. The other one is located in Pilsen, which is also a primarily Mexican-American community, although it is being gentrified. And so all the lovely new young people, artists who are moving in are down for fighting with us against the coal power plant, which has its benefits. But what we are doing is we have been battling this coal power plant for 8 years. Why? This plant does not provide any electricity to the city or the state of Chicago or Illinois. They are basically working these plants into the ground and selling this electricity on the open market. So they're basically cash cows for these companies, particularly Midwest Generation is the name of the company. And so we have been on many fronts trying to get them to shut down. We have gone after them on a state level, we've gone after them on a federal level, and we are currently going after them on a local level. And for us, this is, let me back up by saying it's not like we woke up one day and said, oh, look, there's a smokestack, we should do something about it. This is really a question of doing community organizing in our community and finding out what's important. And what we found out was that we had a high asthma rate. And what we found out was we had low birth weights, a high asthma rate and low birth weights. And we found a lot of health issues in our community, and we're trying to figure out why. Well, lo and behold, a study comes out and says, did you know the local coal power plant in your neighborhood does X, Y, and Z to your community? And so that information empowered us to take this plant on 8 years ago. A couple of years ago, we were fortunate enough to learn about something called mountaintop removal. And so we were able to link coal from the cradle to the grave. and empower our community to say this is not just a question of coal power plants in our community. This is a question of coal in its entirety, from the way it's taken out of the ground and the damage it does to poor white communities in Appalachia, West Virginia, and many, many, many other places, and many, many, many other poor people. The way it's transferred into our community, it comes in our community into barges and pollutes our local waterways, to the plant burning it, creating electricity, putting out smoke, putting out SOx and NOx, putting out particulate matter, you name it, they put it out, mercury. And then their coal ash, which, if any of you know anything, the US EPA is currently talking about regulating coal ash. And as of 2 weeks ago, we just found out that neither the US EPA or the Illinois EPA has any idea what our plants do with their coal ash, how they store it, how they transfer it, where it goes, and what they do with it. And so all of these things, I mean, if the way we look at it is this plant is having an effect on so many parts of our lives that it's inhumane that they should be able to continue to do what they do. And so for us, it's a question of both taking them on and taking on this notion of coal. Illinois sits on a hotbed of coal. I mean, Illinois, if they could dig up all of Illinois and take out all the coal, they probably would. You know, and there's this notion that we need jobs in this country, that coal mining is a job. Coal mining is a job, but it's not a job that's worth killing both the coal miner and communities for. And so we're hearing things like coal gasification, coal to liquids, CCS. All of these terms are coming out in our community. Every time they hear coal, keep saying the same thing. Wipe your hand on a piece of coal and you tell me if your hand is clean. Because at the end of the day, whatever it is that you do with coal, it is still a dirty, dirty fossil fuel. And that's what, as a community, that's what we know, and that's what we believe in, and that's what we fight for, is to say, keep coal in the ground, leave it there. And so what do? We're trying right now, working with our community members, to say, look, the one excuse the plant says is, well, during peak usage, when it's 90 degrees for 10 days and everybody turns on the air conditioner in Chicago, we give you guys energy so that you don't have rolling blackouts. So why are you trying to shut us down? And so what we do is we go door to door and talk to people about energy efficiency. We say, look, think about doing these things for your home to save electricity so that when peak usage comes, there is no peak usage, so that we don't have this problem in the future, so that this coal power plant doesn't have an argument anymore. And so we not just talk about energy efficiency, but we get down and dirty. We talk about your lifestyle choices. We talk about the fact that you need to drive 3 blocks in your car to drop off your kid. We talk about the fact that biking and walking is a much better alternative. We talk about the fact of how much, prepackaged food you're buying and what are you feeding your family. And we look at your lifestyle choice in general. Are we being nosy neighbors? Probably. But the reality is that this is our community and we want to fight for it. And if that means that we got to get up in your business, we're going to do that, because that's how important our community and our world and our planet is to us. So at the root of all of this, what are we doing besides walking around talking to neighbors? What we really do is leadership development. And we do that by looking at what are some of the root causes and what's happening in our community. What are the root causes? And it's not just local. We look at what's happening nationally. We have the privilege of knowing these great organizations and talking to them about what they're doing and empowering us as an organization. And we look at the international picture. We look at things like other coal power plants and other struggles that have happened around the U.S. We look at NAFTA and make a direct link between NAFTA and climate change and immigration in our community. And so it's a question of looking at these bigger issues and realizing that they all impact each other, and educating our community about that. But more importantly, having our community come up with the solutions themselves. Because at the end of the day, they're the ones who are being impacted, and they're the ones who know how to fix this. If Obama would come to my neighborhood in Chicago, where he's from, and ask our folks how to fix global warming, we'd be good. But, at the end of the day, for us, it's really a question of trying to take our struggle and link it with other struggles that are happening across the U.S. and making a stronger voice for community. Because, again, at the end of the day, I think community is who can fight these challenges best if given the voice to do so. So thank you guys very much.